Hi guys, alright, so this is going to be the first overview for Maya. This is going to be the intro tutorial. Alright, so we've just opened up Maya. I'm using 2017, you guys should be using 2018. We'll see how good it is, but try using 2018 unless it has major problems. Alright, so I'm looking over here, where this is the basic program, and if I'm looking, probably the most important thing that we want to kind of work with in the beginning is going to be this little tab right here. It says modeling. You can click on it, and this lets you shift between different modes of functionality for Maya. We're not going to be modeling, we're going to be animating this semester, so I think we're going to really need to be under the animation tab. So I'm going to click on that. And next thing you're going to do, so for good practice, good habits to kind of start working with Maya, things that I would look at would be if I'm starting to set up a scene. If I just open it up and I'm starting a new project, this is what we should do. So we're going to set up a project folder, and it's going to contain all the assets related to the project, all the information, all the textures, etc., which are related to that project. So to do that, I'm going to go File. I'm going to go down to the bottom over here. It says Project Window. I'm going to click on that, and what it's doing is we're going to get one folder, and then it's going to nest all these little folders inside of it, and it's going to keep, ideally it would store all the information organized in these little folders here. If you're working on a project team with a company, with a group of people, this is standard practice. They're going to expect you to know how to work in this format. So it's good just to kind of get in the habit of it from the beginning. And anyone who's going to get an A in the class is going to be turning their work in this format. So we can see the scenes. This is going to keep your Maya files, etc., etc. You can look through, and it's fairly self-explanatory as to how it's going to happen. Alright, so I'm going to go like this. The thing is, it's actually looking at the file path it's putting in my documents folder. I'm going to actually put it in, I can reroute it here. So I'm going to go, but I can give it a new name. We're going to call this Falling Cube. And I'm not going to put it there. This is the default path. It'll always put it in your Maya projects in the documents folder. Let's rework this just to make it easy, because I don't like digging all the way back there. I'm going to do the worst thing possible and put it on the desktop, and that should do it like that. So this will generate Falling Cube folder on the desktop. I'll go accept. It's going to take a second. It should probably be done. I go to File Explorer. Desktop, Falling Cube, here it is. So it does exist. I click, we open, and we can see here are all the little folders that we were looking at before. So when I start saving my scene, it's going to start putting them in the scenes folder. And then Maya, when I open up Maya, if it was the last project, should be looking back to that folder. But if you have a complicated scene with lots of stuff going on, it's best to keep it organized. You can't do it without it. So alright, we're looking at the workspace right now, and what else do we have to look at next? So what we're going to do is we're going to create the cube and the plane which it will fall off of. So I'm going to go to this Create tab. We're going to be working in polygons, NURBS, non-uniform rational B-splines. Polygons are what we're working with, so I go across to polygons. I'm going to click on cube. So we've got a cube. You might have to draw your cube out. Depends what your creation settings are. That's in the settings preferences. But for mine, it's going to automatically generate it. The other way of doing it would be when I create cube, nothing will appear, but when I click and drag, the first click, I have to click twice to generate the cube. First click is going to generate the profile of the cube, and then a second click will loft the cube. So I'll draw the footprint of the cube out, and then I can click and drag up, and it will actually give it the third dimension, giving it height in the y-axis. Alright, so we've got our cube. I want it to, and then let's make our ground plane. So I'll go create polygon primitives, and I'm just going to make a plane. It also makes a plane. So again, I said the hotkeys that you guys need to learn are W, E, and R. Actually, Q is select, but W is move, Q is select, E is rotate, and R is scale. So I want to hit R so I can scale this thing up, because my little ground plane is actually smaller than my cube. It's got a lot of geometry. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I just scaled it up. This is good enough for a ground plane to work with. I select my cube. The problem is my cube is intersecting my ground plane. Also, just to move around the workspace, you can see how I'm orbiting right now. I'm holding the Alt key and I'm holding the left mouse button. You must have a 3-button mouse to work in this program. Basically, I hold the Alt key and I can use all 3 buttons on the mouse. So I'm able to pan back and forth. I'm holding the middle mouse wheel right now, so I'm able to pan back and forth, and then I'm holding the right mouse button and I'm zooming in and out. One other thing I can do is with the middle mouse wheel, I can wheel in and out. Note the difference between that and the right mouse is that I'm doing incrementally. This is 1 click, 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks. I'm zooming, boom, 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 boom. Whereas if I hold Alt and I press the right mouse key, I can zoom in and out smoothly. I can zoom into a very exact location where the step size will give me a predetermined jump in the movement. All right. Other things I can also do right now is I can use the hotkeys A and F. F is going to frame the selected object. So I've just pressed the F key. I can press A, and A is going to frame everything in the scene, regardless if it's selected or not. That's F, or A. What is it? So when I select something, I just left click on it, and you can see it turns green. That means the object is selected. And then again, F. It's already framed, so it's okay. So what I'm going to do is this. Let's go into this cube here. So I select the cube, and I'm going to press F, frame it, and let's I just went into component mode. Don't worry about that. If you do see it actually turn like this light shade of blue, this means we've gone into component mode. What we need to do is now we can edit this object on a deeper level. We're not worried about that right now. So what I want to do is I can just select something else and then reselect the object. Let me just see this for a second. So if I was to go edge, no. Alright, so go back to object mode. So you can just select something else, click once, and then left click again on the object. It has to be green. So I'm going to select that object, I'm going to press W, and I want to make this cube rest on the ground plane. Right now what I could do is I could sort of eyeball it. I can drag it down, I'm getting pretty close, and it's not really working for me. That's not quite there yet. So I want to make it exactly rest on the ground plane. So what I want to do is I want to move the object center of pivot. This is the object center of pivot, so I press E. It'll orbit around this object. It'll also snap the object. If you want to do snapping maneuvers, it'll snap the object to that point. So if I was to press V on the keyboard, W, V, so W for move, V for point snap. So as I'm pressing the V key right now, you can see it's highlighting right here. These are all different forms of snapping. I press V, I click, I drag, and it's snapping to that point. I want it to snap to the base of the cube, not the center of the cube. So we need to move the center of pivot. To do this, what I'm going to do is we have to make it so that we can freely move the pivot. So I can press the D key on the keyboard. So D, V, so D to move the center pivot. So I'm holding D, and you can see now I can move that center pivot off to the side. I press E, there we go, Control Z, we move the center pivot. It'll also snap to this point. So I'm going to hit Control Z, move it back to the center, and I'm going to press W for move so that I can move it up and down. D on the keyboard, the pivot is, I'm now able to move the pivot. I hold V, and I'm going to constrain it in the Y axis. This is up and down, and I just click, and what I want to do is, this is called a point snap. These are the vertices where all the different edges meet, and I can snap to those. So I can go D, grab the Y axis, and all I have to do is D and V, and I'm holding the two together at the same time, and I just mouse over this corner, it snapped to the base. Then what I could do is I can also do a V snap down here, because we've got lots of different little polygons making up this mesh here. Normally the mesh wouldn't be so dense, it would just be a flat plane with no grid going across it, and I would have to mouse over this corner over here to do a point snap. But just to kind of show you some new tools, what we can also do is grid snap. So instead of pressing V for point snap over here, I'm going to press X. You can see, and then you can see the grid. This is grid snap is highlighted. So I'm going to hold X, Y axis, and I snap it down to the grid. This is resting exactly on top of the grid. So this would be sort of this would be well constructed. This is, if you're working pro, this is what people would expect to see. All right, so we're doing good. Next thing we need to do is we need to get the, I want to get the timeline in view there. Okay, so we need to animate this thing. So to animate it, what we're going to do is we have to set keyframes. Basically, think of these as anchor points in time. The workflow is as such. The first thing I do is I adjust the playhead to where I want it to be. This is the timeline right here, and this is the playhead. I can click and drag the playhead across the timeline back and forth. As we start to add keyframes and movement to this, as I would drag this, we would see the scene updating. So the cube will slide across and fall off as I'm dragging this forwards. Okay? Things to think about with the timeline. You have to learn how to kind of, it's sort of abstract idea of time and space right now. But what I'm looking at right now is I'm looking at time. And by default, this should be set to 24 frames a second. We can change that time, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but let's assume it's 24 frames a second. That should be the default settings for film. And so this is 1 second right here, and then this would be 2 seconds. So I can just sort of eyeball it. I'm seeing it there, and this would be about, that's 4 seconds or so. So what I want to do is move the playhead first. This is the first thing I would do, is the playhead gets adjusted first. Then I adjust the scene. So if it's a character, if it's a ball, if it's a car, now I move the car around to where I want it to start the scene from. In the beginning of the scene, you always, generally speaking, you would always want to have the playhead at 1. This would be the beginning of the scene. There are reasons to move that around sometimes, but for our purposes, let's put it at 1. Alright, so then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the channels layers. So I'm moving across to the top right corner. Boom. There we are. These are our channels layers. What's going to happen is this is editing menu, which brings up the specific attributes which are largely used by animators. And it's allowing us to key them out so we can create these anchor points across these different attributes related to the object. So what do I want to do? At this point, the other thing to think about too with the channels layers, it's displaying information about what's selected. So note, I click off, there's nothing there. I click here, I actually get different information than I would be if I'm selecting this. 2 different things. We're concerned about the cube. Okay, so whenever we do any kind of movement, what we're going to want to do is we have to key the movement out before it starts. So if you forget to drop a key, we're going to be doing multiple types of movement. One movement will be translation. I'm going to have it translate like this. The second type of movement is going to be rotation. So as it comes off the edge, it's going to tumble and rotate to its death. So I can Control Z that. Put it back to the beginning. And then we are going to begin. So I'm going to key this guy out. The lazy way of doing it would be pressing S on the keyboard. So watch what's going to happen. We're going to look at 2 places in the scene. One place I want to watch when I press S is over here. The second place is here. I should see a little red tick up here, and I should see them appear across these channels. So by pressing S, S by default will key out all channels. This is really not a good form, but it's a fast way to kind of put something together. So I press S, we can see there they appear, and there's the little red tick. We've created the key. Let's do it better this time though. So I'm going to go Control Z, I remove the keys, and I'm going to, by left clicking over here, I'm clicking over the actual the translation values right now. So all I'm concerned about is its translation. I select these values, I right click, and then I go key selected. Boom. So this is better because all of these other channels here, we're not going to be doing any scaling to this object. It doesn't make sense. And to be really honestly technically accurate, we probably would not need Z to be keyed out. I'm not going to be doing any animation in the Z axis, so you'd only really, if we were being meticulous, only need to key out these 2 channels. Let's just leave it for now because we've started. So I'm going to think we would want to build up a little drama here. I'll give it about 2 seconds to hit the edge, maybe a little under 2 seconds. So it won't be exactly on, like 1 or 2. So I count to myself as I do it, thinking about like how long it's going to take. It's going to be a little under 2. So I'll move it to about here. I'm going to press W on the keyboard. So as I said, this is the process. Set the key, move the playhead, adjust the scene, set the key. This is the workflow. So now we repeat. So now I move the playhead. I'm going to adjust the scene, W, make the update here. I'll bring it up to the edge, something like that, and then key the scene out. So I'll just go across because I've already keyed the Z. I'll key them all. Right click key. We see the key appears here, and let's see if it works. So now I just click and drag. Boom, boom. This is called scrubbing back and forth. Alright, looks like it works. So now, what are we going to do? I'm going to Alt middle key and pan over. And the next thing I'm going to do is we want to have it, I was thinking to have it to rotate and plummet to into the abyss. So at this point, what I'm going to do is here, I'm going to give it about 2 frames because it's just going to kind of like, hit the edge and then it's going to rotate and kind of fall down. One other thing to note too is there's a function here called auto key. My auto key was turned on. I'm not sure if it's on by default, but if this is on, what's going to happen is I don't actually have to click over here to set the keys. I have to drop the first keyframe. So this key must be executed manually by the user, by you. But once that key's been dropped, anytime I make any changes to these the channels that have the key on it, it's going to automatically key it. So for newbies, new people working with Maya, this can be a little confusing because if I start making changes on this frame, if I just playing around with it, it's updating here. It's going to keep those changes, and so oftentimes it's not what you want. So just to kind of be aware of that. So this would be auto key. We can see now it's turned on. Now I'm going to turn it off. For you guys, it might be better just to kind of work manually in the beginning. We'll talk about it next class. So what I'm going to do is, I see at this point it's going to actually slide forward just a little bit, and it's going to start to rotate. So I'm going to just give it a little bit more like that. And if I was really good, actually Control Z, I thought about it again, Control Z. Let's do it like this. Let's make it really exact. So the best way to do this would be to actually snap that center pivot to this edge so that it's going to rotate. It's going to rotate exactly on that edge. Right now I'm eyeballing it. It looks like I'm pretty close, but it's not exact. Control C. So I want you guys to really do it pro. So we go W. I bring up the move tool again. I hold V. I love snapping. This is an amazingly useful tool. I grab the x-axis right here. I've got the grid snap enabled right here. You can see it's enabled. And I'm going to grab that and I'm just going to mouse over this corner and I'm hitting this vert. Now it's exactly on that edge. That's where I want it to be. And here, this is where the rotation is going to take place. So I'm going to press E on the keyboard. And what's going to happen? The truth is, I really should have, when I did the that move, I should do it on this frame right here. Let's actually, it could slide forwards just a little bit, maybe like 1 or 2 frames, something like that. But you could probably do it about here. W, V, and I'm going to grab it and just snap right there. Now it's exactly at the edge. The problem is it hasn't been updated here. If I move this playhead, watch very, very carefully what's going to happen here. We're going to lose that change that I made. So if I move the playhead, you saw how it popped back. We don't want that. So I'm going to go, I move it back to 38, V snap there, and then right click, key selected. Now when I move the playhead, nothing, unless it's going this way, but now it's exactly at the edge. I'll give it about 2 or 3 frames, and you could play with this. I'm just gonna, this would be sort of blocking it in. I'm gonna set a key on this one, so we're gonna go like this, E. Let's start to create that rotation forward, something like that, Okay, and now what I have to do is, this is really important. I would go like this. I actually made a boo-boo. Control Z, Control Z. Let's move it back to this frame here. This is critical to understand. I have to key the rotation out before it starts. Just to illustrate, if I go over here, what I want to do is I want to key it here. So I go like this, right click, key selected, and then let's move it out about 3. This is just taking a guess, E, and I have to play it back to see what the movement feels like about here, and then again right click, key. Let's look at the movement that I got. So it comes over, brink, yeah, great. But I'm gonna go Control Z, 1 2 3 4 5, there. So let's do it this way. Let's just let's move it over 3 here, and now I'm going to rotate it without keying it at the beginning, so I do not have a key on the rotation values right here. And let's move forwards, and I'm going to key out the rotation, and watch what's going to happen. It's going to stay like this. Yep, so no good. You have to have that anchor point when the movement starts. So Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. All right, there we are. We're back. W, M, I, V. I just want to make sure I didn't Control Z. That's okay. So let's key it out at the beginning of the movement. Right click, key. This is critical to understand because when we start to work with characters and more complex objects, you'll have lots of things that are rotating at the same time, are moving, translating. And it's critical to key it out before it starts or after it starts, because it can kind of ripple back through time and affect everything else, and it makes a mess. So you want to just kind of be meticulous about your process. So let's move it out to about here. E on the keyboard, rotate, and then again, right click, key selected. Let's look at the movement. And if I was really doing this, I actually might even do a post test on this. We can play it back and just see what it looks like. I'm just going to press Q so it removes the lines. Here are the playheads. This one's going to take me back to the beginning of the frame. This takes me back 1 frame, so I can jump back 1, 2, 3, 4 manually. And this is going to jump to the next keyframe. This will play the animation back in reverse. This will play the animation forwards. And these are all the same as the first set, but just in the opposite direction. Alright, so let's just hit play. I'm going to bring the timeline in a little bit. This is called the range slider, and I can zoom in and out with the range. Alright, so let's hit play. Alright, good enough. We can dial it in a little bit more as we go, but let's develop this. So with the dialing in, I would start to select these and move them back and forth to get the timing down. Alright, so from here, now what I'm going to do is we've got the cube. I'm going to press W on the keyboard, and let's get that first little bit of kind of drama going, something like that. Alright, so I've got this movement working right now. One thing to kind of consider is at this point right here, I don't have a key. This is sort of saying you need to key the movement out. I need to key the position of this cube at the edge, the translation. If I look over here, you can see that these are dark red and these are light red. It means that there is a key in the timeline on the translation at this frame, but the thing is, it's not at this frame. There's a key on the timeline related to this object for translation, but it's not here. That's what the light one's saying. As I mouse over, watch what's going to happen as I go back to the next one. The key is there, but it means there's nothing here anchoring it down. If I start to rotate this, it's going to affect everything. I need to drop a key across here. So I right click across. I make sure that first adjust the playhead. Go across here, right click, key selected. You see it turns dark. Now I can do that movement. So let's do it. I'm going to do it all as one movement here. So I'm going to go W. There's the drop. Control Z. I keep forgetting my own advice. Move the playhead out. I'm going to say it took this long to go across. It's going to take this long to fall, and it's going to go a much greater distance. So it's going to seem like it's going much faster. So we'll say it goes down to about like here, maybe just a little bit out, so it kind of tumbles forwards. So adjust the playhead, adjust the object, set the key. And I'm going to go E on the keyboard and add the extra. Let's give it a 1 full rotation, like that. There. So the object's been adjusted. Now drop the key. So right click, key selected, done. The movement on the rotation's off because of the center of pivot. It's actually kind of going in and out a little bit, but it's good enough for the first class. We'll go over fixing that stuff in the future. Okay, so from here, let's say it's done. Like this would be the completed animation. This is the range, and what are we gonna do? This is the range slider. We've got 200 frames. Let's have it just play to 65. I don't need at render time. I just need the actual animation. So I just give it a value of 65, which clips it. This is what's going to render. If I leave some of those extra frames on, it can render out the whole thing, which will be a lot of dead, empty space. Okay, so let's do it. Animation is done. We need to generate that little Play Blast movie that we talked about. So at this point, we want to see a little artistic creativity. Let's kind of look at it from a few different angles. Where's it going to end up? Just a little bit out like that, something like this. So try to get that camera angle, which makes it look interesting. This does count in this class. I think this looks okay. It's not perfect, but it's good enough. Alright, so I've adjusted the camera for the shot. Think of yourself as like you're doing film, and it's time to make the play blast. So I'm going to right click in the timeline and click on the play blast. What's important to understand is that when I hit the playhead here, I'm not actually seeing an accurate playback. It might be pretty close, but the only way to really see like the actual speed of the playback is by generating a movie. This is going to relate to the processor in my computer. If my processor is too fast, it might play a little fast. If it's too slow, it's going to be laggy, and the timing might actually be off. It'll tell you it's doing the best it can, but the only way to really tell would be with the play blast. As I said, the idea of the play blast is speed and efficiency. We're supposed to be knocking these play blasts out in a few seconds. It should not take that long. If it's taking over a minute, you're doing something wrong when you hit play. So let's hit stop, and I'm gonna actually just select this guy. I'm gonna press Q on the keyboard to get rid of those control handles, and because now I can see the cube a little more clearly. Okay, so at this point I'm going to make the play blast. I go right click, play blast, options. It's going to put it in that folder that you created for the project scene. So that's where it should be saving it. This depends on the codecs you have installed in your computer. I've got AVI, QuickTime. QuickTime should be smaller than the AVI. Quality. This is not about quality. You're not trying to make that beautiful, pretty Pixar render with the play blast. It's about speed and efficiency. So really looking at the motion, looking at the movement, studying it, and making tweaks. You don't want to invest in the large render right now. So let's do it. Scale. So what it's going to do is it's going to scale the movie it's going to make to 50% of this actual workspace. So it's going to reduce the workspace by 50%. I could also choose render settings. Don't worry about that. Do it from window. We want to render from window, which is this. This is the workspace. It's rendering this window here. I click apply, and we should see there's the play blast. Alright, so for the play blast, I need to save the file. We can see where it's going. For some reason, my computer's normally it would actually, as soon as the play blast would be done, it would just appear as a movie on the screen. It's not doing that, so I just click save file. I go to browse, and I can see that it's gonna put it in the movie folder. So that's good enough. I can name it Cube And let's go apply. It makes the play blast. Should be done. So now to find the play blast, if it's not bringing it up, which is super annoying, I am going to go to desktop, Fallout Cube, and I'm going to go to movies. There the cube is. Right click, open with. This is actually super annoying. I shouldn't have to do this. It should just be coming up, so I'm going to figure that out. QuickTime. Play the movie. So this should be the accurate playback speed at this point. Alright, so for your homework, what I want to see is you take this movie, upload it to YouTube, and put it on the blog. Alright, good luck.